when we wrote the thing of him being abseiling in the towel, we didn't know it was going to be -10 that night. So he deserves a special award just for that.
I can't just let you win this game.
Welcome to The Running Man.
The Stephen King book that this movie is based on takes place in 2025, and here we are in 2025. So did you always in your mind have that as a target? Were you like, I got to make this movie by 2025 or get it released in 2025?
No, I mean, I don't want to say happy coincidence, but it was not lost on us. Like, I think I told the studio that was the case. It wasn't the case that, like, this is a 2025 novel, we got to get it out. Through the process of it, I got to ask Stephen King, why 2025? Because the book was published under a pseudonym in 1982, but he wrote it in 1973, and he picked that number. And he said, it sounded cool, and it was a long way off. But here we are. We decided in the movie to not put the date on the film. We just said it's a different tomorrow, and it's in this retro-futuristic alternate 2025 where we thought, well, if the book was published in 1982, what if this is Stephen King's idea of what 2025 is like? So some things have become more advanced, and everything else has gone to shit.
Well, now I know that you are a lifelong fan of Stephen King, and I'm sure you're a fan of a bunch of his books, not just Running Man. What was it about this one in particular that made you want to adapt it as opposed to any of the other 50 or so that you could have?
Well, I had started reading Stephen King at exactly the right age, which is too young. And I had read The Running Man when I was 14, and I had read it before I saw the 1987 film, which, if you've read the book and seen the other movie, they're two completely different things. So even though I wasn't a film director when I was reading the book, obviously you visualize it, and I'd sort of visualized a completely different movie in my head. And so I just knew that there was another fun, entertaining movie from the same source material.
The scale of it is insane, and I know you were telling me outside that you started shooting this in like November of basically a year ago?
Yeah. It's crazy because it's like my sort of biggest, most complicated movie, but also in terms of from green light to release, the shortest time of anything I've done. It's easily the most ambitious part of it, other than the action, was just the amount of locations, because we wanted to shoot as much of it on location as possible. I didn't really want to make a green screen movie. I wanted it to feel like you're on the ground with him and you're on this run with him. But to do that and to cover like 3 cities and rural areas and trains and planes and everything was like a lot of work.
Well, what for you is the key to pulling that off on this kind of compressed time frame?
I mean, no sleep? I don't know. I mean, I'll say this, is that I wouldn't have got through any of it without not just an amazing crew, but also a lot of people I'd worked with before. There were some sort of key people on the movie that I hadn't worked with before, like Julian Day, the costume designer, and also the stunt coordinator, Nikki Berwick, I hadn't worked with before. Sharon Martin, makeup, I hadn't worked with before. But everybody else I had, and it meant that we could, with a sort of truncated pre-production of line and a release date to hit, we could sort of hit the ground running with a lot of people that we had already had a shorthand with. So I think without that, if I'd have been making this with an entirely new crew, it would have been even harder than it was. There's no getting around it that the film is like a product of an amazing team working extraordinarily hard, you know?
Well, and you mentioned the stunt coordinator. Talk a little bit about the collaboration between you and the stunt coordinator and Glenn Powell in terms of what kind of action hero you wanted him to be, what you wanted the fight sequences to play like, because there's this, you kind of thread this interesting needle where the fight sequences are really dynamic and they're visceral and they're exciting, but there is like a sort of humanity to them. Like you believe that this guy he's capable, but he's not, an action hero. I mean, again, not an action hero like the Arnold of the original movie.
Yeah, that was something that was really important to us, I think, and it's there in the book, because I think a lot of action movies these days, you have characters that are already the best at what they do, and they start the film as like, this guy is the best assassin ever, and at the end of the film, this guy is still the best assassin ever. And I think the thing is that because you need to believe that Ben Richards could die, and also he's not like a fighter per se. He's tough because he works in construction, so he's got a thick hide, but he's winging it a lot of the time. And so a lot of the action was designed around that, where he's kind of like having to wildly improvise. So you're then designing the shots around that, and how can we be clever? What can Glenn do? What is not safe for Glenn to do? It's a lot of prep, but I think that's the thing, is I think coming in with a strong plan. You're never, as you probably understand, you're never on a film like this coming onto the set and improvising. You've got to to get through a schedule like this and the time frame, you've just got to sort of have a plan. Obviously, things change or something, or maybe a better idea comes up, or you're running out of time and you have to kind of think of another way out of something. But really about with action sequences like this is like the design of everything. You know, when we wrote the thing of him being abseiling in the towel, we didn't know it was going to be -10 that night. So he deserves a special award just for that.
Was casting Powell kind of a way of, you know, he's sort of inherently likable, and so it was that sort of a way of making it work so that you knew the audience would stay with him, even though he's got this really sort of hard edge?
I think he's got a great everyman quality to him. I sort of said to him when I cast him that I needed bad mood Glenn, because he has a lot of righteous anger in him. He feels like he's been held back. He feels like he's been punished for doing the right thing. And so he's got a lot of pent up fury. And obviously, while that's a good thing to stick up for other people and it's a noble thing, unfortunately, it makes him the prime candidate to be on the show. And when he's in that first scene at the registration booth and the guy behind the counter is sort of passive-aggressively taunting him, they want to make him lose his temper. And as soon as he does, they're like, that guy's good TV, send him up to the 6th floor.
Well, and then you've got such a great bad guy in Josh Brolin. What kinds of conversations did you have with him?
We just said that the worst people in the business don't have to show their strength. They don't have to bear fangs. And so it was that thing with Josh is I think, well, you know, you don't have to at any point start twirling your mustache or raising your voice. I like that at the end of the film that he's sort of disappointed in Ben because he's like, why are you scared of making money? What's wrong with you? Obviously, like and I like the way that Josh like says the darkest, like most sort of malevolent things in an entirely reasonable manner. He's just got that kind of, it's almost like he's an evil hypnotist. And I think that's the thing that I think we just talked about people that we've met in it, not in just in the film business, but in business generally, that they kind of like wield soft power.
And so, you know, you mentioning Stephen King being involved, and again, you being a lifelong fan. I mean, what was your first conversation with him like? And was it intimidating? Was it exciting? Was it both?
Well, I mean, it blows my mind even to say this, but he'd been a supporter of ours for a long time, because even as far back as Shaun of the Dead, he'd given us a press quote for that movie. And on the print ads, there was this quote from Stephen King, who I'd never met. And it wasn't until Baby Driver that we started emailing. You know, the thing is that me and Michael Bacall handing in the script, Stephen King, as well as being the world's most famous author, living author. So it was a really sweaty weekend waiting for Stephen King to respond. But he loved it. He was really encouraging. He was, you know, hands off in terms of the film, but also just get his kind of thumbs up on the adaptation and the changes we made, especially to the ending, meant a lot, because it is that thing where the sort of the author sort of says, I wouldn't do the ending to the book like that now. I think what you did was a smart sort of change. So that was great, and he's been really great about the finished film as well. I feel very heartwarmed that I got a thumbs up from Stephen King and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, absolutely. I mean, this does feel like it belongs in that lineage, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it even more watching again tonight. So thanks so much for coming out and talking.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming, guys.